Hi, you're listening to Thoughtful Wellness Revolution, where we believe wellness isn't wellness if it's just for you. We're your hosts, Zahra and Hien. And before we get started, please make sure to give us a 5-star rating and review. Even though we're a podcast that believes in decolonizing, we're still bound to the algorithm. So every little bit that you can help us out, we really appreciate it. And we thank you for all the support. Let's get into it. Hey, friends. Welcome to the very intro portion of our podcast. And so Hien and I are just checking in with each other. It's been a while since we recorded one of these, so maybe this is out of order from everything else, but that's fine. Hien, what's on your mind today?
Zahra, what's on my mind is that it's very early for me usually, but as of late, it's been normal because since the last time we recorded an episode, I got a full-time job where I have to wake up early in the morning and go to work. And so this was our first time where we did our interviews in the morning. We usually do it in like the afternoon. And so that's on my mind, is that for me right now, it's like 7 a.m., but I'm like wide awake and ready to roll. And that's just kind of bizarre. What's on your mind, Zahra?
Well, I'll start by saying I'm a little upset that you're now a morning person because since getting sick or more sick, I've been less of a morning person and I love being a morning person. So I'm jealous. I wish we could switch. I'll take your morningness and you can have my sleeping. I don't care about sleeping in. I want to get up when the sun is up and I want to start the day like a real basket case. I don't know if that's a term I can use, but I said it. But what's on my mind today? What's on my mind is that I've had so many good, like, when I got up this morning, I was like, oh, this is a great what's on my mind today. Then I had another one last night and like, that's not the point of this. So I don't remember what they are and I couldn't remember what they are even if I tried. So what's on my mind is that I always wish I had a cool thing to say. Yeah, I guess I'm just eternally frustrated with the state of the world. I attended a school board meeting for my local county this week, and man, just fucking listen to children. I don't know. That's what's on my mind. I am excited from the podcast we just did. I loved our guest. I think Tia Meredith is so smart, had so much brilliant stuff to say. Sorry, I'm just like getting into it now. Hien has to go to work. I'm a bit tired. We're doing our best. But yeah, so the podcast today, I loved Tia Meredith. So fucking great, so smart, so much insight about the publishing industry, and her healing journey was really beautiful to hear about. And her life has been so interesting. So I think that's really cool. Is there anything from this podcast, Hien, that you want to share before our guests get into the interview?
I think that I agree with everything you say. I think she's such an interesting person. I think that like you only hear about, however long the episode was. And I was kind of keeping track of time. It was a little less than 30 minutes long. But we could have had her on for like 2 hours because she has lived such an interesting life. And even where she's at right now, like at this point of the recording, she's in Croatia with her husband, and she's just really interesting. And I think it's really cool to hear someone who has experience in the spiritual publishing or just publishing industry in general, to hear them talk, because none of it really surprised me, but it is a little bit sad. But I am just really glad I'm just glad that we had her on, because I love listening to her talk. She has a beautiful voice, beautiful presence, and we hope you enjoy it.
Hey friends, today we're talking to Tia Meredith, a writer, healer, and truth dealer who is currently in Croatia. So Tia, what's on your mind today?
I actually woke up really sentimental today, which is very weird for an Aries. It's like so anti our vibe to be in our emotions. But I had this really beautiful dream about a friend of mine, like really like in this amphitheater, like just doing her thing. And she's Filipina. And I was just like, I like woke up crying. So I'm in that mood. So I'll try to keep my stuff together as we go forward. Yeah.
Well, I love and welcome the sentimental mood. And I like it because there's like a sense of, I don't know, it sounds like there's a sense of theater. And I love that because I'm a Leo. And I want to say that we really welcome you as an Aries because this podcast is also run by 2 other fire signs, Zahra being a Sagittarius. So we have this like trifecta, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius here right now. And I love that. I think it's special. I always love having an Aries and a Sagittarius around because that's when we get wild, right? So yeah. I know from going on your website, peeking a little bit, that you've worn many hats and you've lived a very interesting life. And your website in particular, and I just checked this last night, so it's recent. It says that you're coming out the closet as a healer in 2023, which, like, what a time. We really do need more healers, as many as we can get right now. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey that led you here, that led you to saying you're a healer in 2023?
It was such a, I know it's like such a weird statement to say I was coming out of the closet as a healer, but it took me a really, really long time to accept this part of myself because, I was born and raised in Missouri. I am a biracial person. It's super Christian, super conservative. And that's just like the foundation. And I had to really go against that for a long time. I came out of college and I went and worked for the government. And like my family was so proud of me at this like boring job that I had. And I was like climbing the corporate ladder, and I moved to Seattle, and then I went to DC because anybody who works in the government, like that's where you go so that you really become someone. And at that point, I was just over it. Like something happened, something broke in me. I was in a very toxic relationship in Seattle to the point that I had to basically run away from it for my own safety. It was very high levels of narcissistic abuse. And so I think that was that catalyst moment of like starting to ask myself in my life, what is this really about? Like, what do I really care about? And I always had this dream to go to Greece, which again, let's just remind back my friends, like I'm from Missouri. Nobody was thinking about that stuff, like especially in the age range that I'm in. And I didn't see Mamma Mia or any of that kind of stuff. And I was like, you know what? I just really want to go to Greece. Like that's where I want to go. And so I had the resources at that point because I'd really been building, my career for so long. And I booked a trip by myself for like 2 weeks and went to Greece. And all I did was cry. Here's the thing, like the most beautiful place on the planet. And I just cried for 2 weeks because I just hadn't felt in so long. And something started to heal for me on that land. And so when I came back to DC, I had called a friend of mine on the phone and I was telling her about it. And my skin was glowing. Like there's just something about that Aegean vibe. Like, I mean, I was like golden. And she told me, she's like, I've known you for 3 years and I've never known you to be this happy. Like, I don't care what you have to do, but go back if you can. And because I'm an Aries and we all know this now, I had to burn everything to the ground. I couldn't just do it. I had to burn it. And so I quit and I sold everything I owned and I just left with like 2 suitcases. And, I know it's a long way to get there, but that was like that big piece that had to break. Like I had to break away from corporate me. I had relaxed hair like the whole time. I had never gone to like my curls. So I'm living in Greece. There is no way I'm getting a relaxer. Like my hair is just going back home. It's just getting more and more natural. And this new artist started to emerge, this person that I am, and I'm still becoming. But yeah, I had went to Delphi and I just started to unlock. I started to meditate a lot. I started to, at that time, I was studying A Course in Miracles. Like I was just experimenting and trying to get back home to myself. But it's just been that kind of journey, just over and over again. You know, I came back, I was in Chicago, San Diego, like it's just been a lot for me to wind up and find transference healing. I studied Reiki, like the transference healing is where I came home and said, this is the kind of energy work and practice that I want to do. So that's a short form of that journey, but yeah, there's a lot of different Tias in there for sure.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know, so for some context, like what year was this when you decided to, I'm going to Greece? And honestly, in my head, the first thing I thought of was Mamma Mia. I was like, oh, Mamma Mia vibes, because when I watch Mamma Mia, I feel like I want to leave to Greece as well.
It is the place to go. This was back in 2013. So you can tell how long, you know, this has been. And there's 10 years even to this. And I think why I wanted to share it with the two of you and your audience is like, it takes time. And it's okay that it takes time to understand who you are. Like, I think some people are gifted in that space and maybe they have the kind of family and the support system to really be authentic. But you know, I had a narcissistic parent, and that makes you become a people pleaser. There's a lot of different trauma responses to that, right? But I had to learn. I had to learn to adapt and survive. And so then I had to unlearn all of that to come to this point of transference healing and working with that energy practice. Yeah.
I love that. Basically what you're sharing, and I know you probably have so much more to share, but just thinking of it's 10 years then, because if it's 2013 and it's 2023 now, that's 10 years. And so definitely some things take time, and definitely with narcissistic abuse, I can imagine how much time is needed. Like, I think people might think, especially in wellness spiritual spaces, that it can just be like a quick snap fix. But we talk a lot about here about we're very critical of that. Like, we're very critical of the idea of the spiritual healer or whatever wellness influencer telling us that it's a quick fix, because it is not always true. Probably a lot of times not true. Can you tell us a little bit more about being a transference healer? Like, I have done Reiki, or not done Reiki, but like I have had Reiki done on me. So I know a little bit about that. What is transference healing?
Yeah, it's something that's come out of Australia. So what's so interesting is if you go to Australia, people know what it is. But outside of that, I've had a lot of interesting times trying to explain what it is, because I think it must have been like what Reiki was when it first started. It's like, how do you explain an energy practice? But transference healing it's a mixture of different elements that Alexis Cartwright, who is the person who's brought this onto the planet, she's still living, doing her thing in Australia. But there's elements of acupuncture in it. This is all energetic acupuncture. There's sound, there's crystals, so it's all these different things mixed together. Animal medicine, because I love the shamanistic vibe. And so when you come into a transference healing session, it would be similar to Reiki in terms of like, I'm not going to touch you, so I'm just working with your energy field, bringing forward things, usually things that are pretty deep. That just happens to be the kind of medicine I bring through. So blocks and things that are just in your field that need to come out and through. And by the way, it's not like this thing that's like, oh my gosh, it's just going to solve everything when it does. What happens, when you do it one time, what winds up occurring that I've seen with people who work with me is like those deeper things that need to come to the surface, come there so that you can address them. Because I'm really anti this whole vibe and energy healing of like, I'm just going to snap my fingers and it's going to go away, or I'm going to wave my hands over you. It really isn't like that. It's like, to me, transference healing is way more empowering, because yes, I'm pulling stuff forward. Yes, in a psychic way, you may or may not see something or provide information, but that's not really the point. The point's for you. The point's for your experience, for you to witness it, to cry those tears that you didn't even know you had. Like, it's those kind of things that come up in a transference healing session. But I came to it because last year, the Hubs and I and the Pug left the US in 2021 now. And we went to, originally we're in Croatia, like we had opened with, and we went to the wrong part of Croatia. I'm going to try to say that in the most polite way, but it felt like the Alabama of the US, and they weren't feeling this brown child. And and my husband's Croatian. So I was like, we got to evacuate the dance floor. So we just wound up on this year of YOLO. Like, we had no idea. Like, we just had our bags and our dog, and we were on trains, and it was wild. And we wound up in the UK, and I went to Glastonbury and just like wound up floating into the store called Halo Avalon there. And that's where I met my teacher, and just wound up in that journey, because I'm just like circling around the UK. I was in Scotland and all this stuff. I'd come back and train in Transference Healing, and I would come back and train again until I was certified. So yeah, life is strange, my friends. It's so strange.
That sounds so lovely and serendipitous, though. Like, just the way you explain from going to the wrong part of Croatia to hopping on the trains and just going around Europe and the UK. I don't know if you know this, but Zahra is half British. So I don't know, Zahra, if you want to share any more about that. But I think that's really cool and lovely.
Yeah, no, I was going to say too, there are so many things I was going to say, but I'm on mute because it's early and I'm tired. But I absolutely loved when you were talking about going to Greece, and you're like, yeah, it was this beautiful solo trip and I was in such a beautiful place, and I was just crying every day. Because I have also done some solo backpacking, which I don't know if that's what you were doing there, but like traveling alone and like getting away from life, sometimes there is just so much space more to cry, because you're like it allows a lot to come up. But your journey, like getting to Croatia, and your journey with transference healing, transference energy. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Transference Healing. No, it's so new. I don't blame you. This is like the whole thing.
Sounds so beautiful, and just like Hien was saying, like serendipitous, you know what I mean? Like, it would be like you're on this wild journey where like you're just like, I don't know what's happening, I don't know what's going on, but there's this one thing that like grounds me and is like really drawing me back and to like open me up. And I think that's so beautiful, and that you want to share that with everyone. Yeah, so I don't know, I just love that. Thank you. I am curious. So we talked a little bit. I don't want to get, we want to save this for behind the paywall. So if you all are listening, there's going to be a better conversation there. But because you also mentioned you were doing Course in Miracles, which leads me to Hay House. Like, you worked with Hay House, correct? I am a little curious if there's anything about that experience you want to share with us, because I have thoughts on the publishing industry, but as someone who's not in it, I think, and someone who is in it with you, I would think you might have more to say about that.
Yeah, there's so much going on in the publishing industry, and why I've been so excited to see new imprints like Spirit Bound Press and Row House like start to come into the scene. And Rebecca that leads Row House is going to be, one of the top examples of what goes on behind the scenes. But when I came back from Greece and wound up in Chicago and then San Diego, I wound up getting a job with Hay House, and I didn't know that that's who I was interviewing for at that point. But I got a job and wound up becoming a senior copywriter within that house. And it was on the digital course side. But being in the publishing house, or being in a publishing industry, you're involved, like you're seeing what's going on behind the scenes. And when I was a newbie in the spiritual space, and I think regrounding or re-getting my footing, I guess it was cool to like talk about crystals, and like there's nothing wrong with that to an extent. But what I started to notice was a couple of things, that part of the industry becomes very predatory on cotton candy spirituality. That's how it feels to me. And that it's not really healing or working through things. Instead, it's like, you just have to feel good and say affirmations. And like, look, I have an Aries sun, moon, and rising Capricorn. You're not going to get me with affirmations. Like, I just can't. I can't. It doesn't work for me. Like, bless if it does for you. I'm not trying to like discount somebody's journey, but it's really difficult. But I also saw a lot of issues with lack of representation. I mean, that was just immediate. You know, even if you like take a little peruse around the office, you're like, yo, where is everyone? You know, why am I the only one that's here? And I remember very distinctly at one point, we were running an online course campaign and I was reviewing like the images for a sales landing page. And I'm just like, where's the diversity? Like, what's happening? I was like, the women in the photos don't even have curly hair. Like, this is how, it's not even like skin tone, not like, where is the curl? And I remember going and speaking to the folks about this, and I was immediately gaslit. Immediately. And so like one of the first, you know, somebody said in the office, well, I don't see color. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't see me? Like, but that's the vibe, right? I know y'all are like, we're nodding together in this. Like, it's the way that it just becomes like washed over, erased, you know, people who are of any kind of like fringe, and it's not fringe, by the way, right? Like none of this stuff is fringe, but they act like it's fringe. They don't get the kind of promotion dollars behind it. It's like, oh, you know, they don't sell as well as, you know, A, B, C, and D, you know, author. And also the internal cultures of those locations would absolutely shock people what it's actually like behind closed doors to work there.
Wow, thank you for sharing about that. I feel like what I've heard is that there is a little bit, or maybe a lot, of spiritual bypassing with the affirmations and feeling good and not really working through things. But, you know, it almost feels as if feeling good equals spirituality, or at least that message that some of the spiritual people and companies are putting out, which, yeah, that does not work on me as well. Although I do love affirmations itself. That is definitely not the only thing. I think if anything, that's just like a starting point, but then I have to do the deeper shadow work or whatever else. And it also sounds like you were probably working in a culture where they followed by the white supremacy values culture set of, you know, denial and avoidance of conflict, probably individualism, and just feeling like there's no problem because they don't see color, or they're just probably, I mean, if it's a publishing house, they probably feel like it's just business, right? Like it's just business. Like we just want to work on promoting the authors and the people and the things that do sell well. And that, of course, is tied to capitalism and all the problems with that as well. Zahra, I don't know if you have any questions or any thoughts you want to share about this.
Yeah, no, I found what you had to say very interesting and rang very true for how I felt things were going on within the Hay House publishing world. And, you know, I guess I should say the spiritual publishing world, like not like they're special. But yeah.
I feel like they're the most well-known. And so I think it's a great example. And I think that also what you're saying is accurate. This is a systemic issue, right? And this is what I love about y'all's podcast. This is a systemic issue. And as Rusma Menakem talks about, this is about white body supremacy. And that's what it happens in that space, and honestly is more difficult to deal with and call out because of the bypassing. So like they don't even want to look, they've transcended mind, they've transcended body. It is a way more challenging than you would think of just like trolls in some kind of a shared space, because I'm good. Like everybody's one, there's oneness. It's like, baby, you haven't experienced oneness. Like I'm looking at you and I know that's not true because of what you just said 5 minutes ago. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting because we're talking about white supremacy culture, like within business and within, you know, wellness, but it's like white supremacy spirituality is a thing where it is that like, we are above it. We are all already one. And it's like, what do you mean we're all already one? Because if we're one, like part of us is saying like, hey, we're not being represented. We're being unfairly discriminated against, experiencing hardships. And you're like, yeah, but we're already one. And it's like, okay, well then you're not experiencing oneness. Like, I don't know. It is very wild to kind of hear and see all of this going on. I knew just a little bit about what was going on in the publishing world because I followed Rebecca. I cannot remember. Do you know Rebecca's last name?
Baruchi.
Thank you. Because she came out with a book called Zahra's Big Messy Day that turned out okay, and it's like a kid's book about feelings. And I was like, oh, well, it's got my name. I have to buy it. And then I remember there being a whole thing where they weren't publishing the second round of the book, or something was happening and then Row was born. Row House Publishing was born. And I was like, oh, there's like a bigger story to tell there. And I really appreciate that you're willing to come on here and even just like a little bit share your experience and what it was like and what's going on there, because I do think it's very easy in the wellness world to hear Hay House and be like, oh, that's a reputable spiritual group. But there's a lot
Publishing.
of what, what's
Publishing
going on.
Yeah, publishing acts like trash. Like, I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. They act like trash, and they don't provide equal book deals for folks. Like, if you peel back that curtain even at all, and that's what Rebecca was talking about. She was one of the original whistleblowers on what was happening behind the scenes. And it's not changed, y'all. It's not. It's like there's a lot of virtue signaling, in my opinion. There's a lot of attempts, but like when you're in the space, like when you're in the office, because we're all virtual now, like, that the movement is so small. Like, it's such micro steps. Like, if I'm literally in a space and I'm still experiencing microaggressions within that space, you think like that's not going to translate over to the artists and the authors and these beautiful souls that are like putting their heart and soul into things? Like, absolutely it is. Like, it just is. And that's what's I'm in this bridge spot, like I used to feel very honored. Like I'm behind the scenes, right? I can finally like do something to elevate these voices, and you just become one voice in an echo chamber. You really do. And it's very frustrating. And it's really starting to tear me down, to be transparent. Like, I'm like, Spirit, what else do you want me to do? Like, I'm tired, and I don't know how to bring this in or change this any more than just existing in the space.
Absolutely. And I think you've raised a really beautiful point there, where it is like how, like, I think Hien and I have talked about it maybe on the podcast before, of like, do you fix the system by being in the system and saying, hey, please, there's a problem, come on, and you're maybe the only one screaming about it? Or do you break out of it and say, like Rebecca with Row House Publishing, whose last name I can't remember, and I am really deeply apologetic for that, but and you say, no, actually, let me just build something new. You know what I mean? And it is really the fine line, because we can't just say, oh, no more systems, we're done with all of them, because they still exist and they're still pumping out stuff. So it really is like, I appreciate you sharing like your internal, I guess I'll say, quote unquote, battle about it, because do I stay here and do I keep fighting the fight, or do I like move out, or like what do I do? And I think, it is a spiritual journey and it is a personal journey, and I think it's really beautiful that you're willing to share that. So thank you.
Well, thanks.
And also, so at this point in the interview, we do want to talk more about this, but we'll save that for behind, our bonus episode, so that we have cool stuff to talk about there. And so we don't go out too late, because Hien has to go to work. But so generally at this point, we ask our guests, what's one thing you want to see more of in wellness, and what's one thing you want to see less of in wellness? And that can be in context of publishing, context of your work with energy transference, or just in general.
I mean, I would like to see true diversity. I would like to see truly elevated voices. I would like to see folks who are in their wisdom, who have translated their knowledge and understanding into wisdom. And what I see a lot of, and what I wind up having to uphold in this system, are people who are audacious and they're not grounded, and some of them are very uncool people behind the scenes. They're not kind. And that's what I crave in this space, that like even diversity of ideas, like where are my hoodoo people? There's whole vibes out here, like where are my tea leaf readers? Like they're out here doing beautiful things, moving the planet, moving energy, like really working with Mother Earth and other things I don't even know about, right? I don't know. Maybe they're doing some Star Child stuff. But that's what I'm looking for. And that's what I pray for in this space, is that level of diversity, both physically and also just practice wise, not doing the most.
And how can people get in touch with you or learn more about your work?
So my website, I'm always like modifying as I go, because y'all have mentioned, like there's still things I'm doing. So tiameredith.com. And then I'm usually at Tia Meredith writer on Instagram. I am loading my stories up with my TikTok curations, which is like one of my favorite things to do. So those are the two best places to find me.
We really appreciate having you, and thank you so much for sharing about your journey and more about the spiritual publishing industry. And also, I just want to say you have such a beautiful podcast voice. I know you also have a podcast. I don't know if that's something you want to plug as well. If people want to hear more of your beautiful voice, where can they listen?
Oh, you're so sweet. Yeah. Courage Unknown. I did one season. I'd had 34 episodes. I'm thinking about rebooting it. I'm trying to figure out if I want to like also do a visual with YouTube. But yeah, if you want to hear about what the year of YOLO was like, that podcast series will tell you exactly what happened.
Thank you. So this is the post interview with Tia, and I really enjoyed it. I think that, first of all, she has a lovely, lovely podcast voice. And second of all, I really enjoyed her energy, and I find her life so interesting and her insights onto the spiritual publishing industry so interesting. And, she's just someone that I hope to continue to keep in touch with, honestly. It's kind of where my mind's at. How about you, Zahra? Any thoughts or reflections from the interview?
Yeah, I feel similarly. I was excited when she emailed us and I was like, oh, she sounds very cool. But to actually speak to her and know how cool she is, I was like, oh my gosh, you're like so much cooler than I would have like even been able to guess, And I just found what she like her experience from her life insights I found really beautiful. And then I also found her insights obviously about the publishing world very interesting. Particularly, as we are in a world where we've got a lot of spiritual bypassing and nonsense and things going on. So it's really nice to hear from someone who's like been in the space. And I just want to go to Greece now. I've wanted to go to Greece for a while, but now I'm like, now we have to go to Greece because she had such a beautiful experience crying in Greece.
Yeah, right on. I feel that. I think what I really appreciate about her is she shared about her life experience and how like traveling was a part of that or is a part of that. Like she's living in Croatia right now. And I just find people who are able to do that so cool. And like, not that like I couldn't also figure it out. But I guess because at this current point in my life, I haven't yet figured that out, to just go where I want to go and just do it. It's really nice to know that there's other people who exist who are able to do that, especially other, BIPOC who are able to do that. And I just so find it interesting how like all the places life takes her, like how that just ends up happening and how she ended up being in England and finding Transference Healing. And I think that's always a really cool thing where like when you don't know where life is taking you, or like you might know sort of like, I mean, she knew she was in England. She knew she was like traveling throughout Europe that year, but like you don't know what you'll find until you get there. And like, I don't know, there's something about it that like warms like the wanderlust traveling heart in me that's like, oh, I want to do that. I want to go somewhere and like not really know what I find until I get there and realize it was probably meant to be. I don't know, corny, but that's kind of like, I really like feeling that way.
Yeah, as someone who did a lot of solo backpacking and just a lot of travel in general, I love that. And it makes me, I'm not gonna lie, feel a little sad that I can't do that right now and don't have that ability. Um, but this is a fun podcast, so we're not talking about that. Um, yeah, no, I thought the transference energy thing was really great. I think there is something very serendipitous about travel, and like, I'm not saying you can't have that experience on the road or at home or like in your everyday life, but there is just very something that can be serendipitous about like meeting the right people or like running into the right thing, or like, and there is just something about, and it's not about travel per se, it's about being out in the world and being like so open to new experience, you know what I mean? And just like what comes your way. Cause there is such a thing that like when you're in your everyday life, you go to your coffee shop, you drive the same route, like you go to work every day, you go to your graduate, like whatever your like routine things are. So you're kind of running into you're like in the same energy all the time. So there is something about like travel or like doing something different or like just like changing your routine up or going somewhere else that is like so like I don't know what you were saying, like the feeling of like meant to be-ness of it all, like when you just like are into the unknown in whatever realm that is.
Yeah, that's for sure. Do you want to share any of your reflections on what she had to share about her past working experience at Hay House? I mean, we'll just say now and plug it that if you listen to our bonus episode, subscribe for $5 a month to get bonus content, then you can hear more about what she has to say about working in spiritual publishing. But just some of the things she shared about Hay House, I'm like, wow, that's kind of juicy. And also both not surprising and like disappointing.
Yes, yeah, I found it both fascinating and unsurprising because I mean, we all know at this point that if you don't know that the wellness world is just like a minefield of potential QAnon rabbit holes you can fall down, you know what I mean? Uh, Surprise, it is. And a lot of that comes from publishing companies that, as stop, sorry, my dog. That as Tia said during our interview, like it does very much come from like spiritual bypassing, white body supremacy, like when you have those values that are like ingrained in your publishing house and ingrained in what you're doing, it's very easy to fall down these QAnon rabbit holes because a lot of that shit is based in Nazi eugenics. If you don't like, sorry, I just learned recently that organic food, Nazis, from Nazis. Sorry, I'm not trying to make everything about Nazis right now, but it's, you know, they're seeping into the world everywhere we are. And it is really interesting to hear, you know, because I think a lot of like in spiritual awareness in general, people are always like, oh, but like, you know, they light up inside or like they're so aligned or things just work out or whatever, whatever. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't mean you're a good person. It doesn't mean you're actually doing the work of every day sitting and being like, oof, did I do that? Was I mean to that person that way? Or did I do this thing that way? Also, I saw, sorry, I'm going to let you talk for a minute because now I'm being flooded with a bunch of things I want to say. And some of them pertain to our bonus episode, which you guys definitely want to check out. We're not like trying to plug it to like really get people. I mean, we are obviously trying to get people onto our bonus episodes, but this one is so good that y'all need to hear it.
I guess like what's on my mind with all this right now is just thinking about how different, I don't know, oppressive systems are interlocking and support each other because, you know, the spiritual bypassing serves who or what? It serves white supremacy. It serves capitalism. It serves, you know, ableism and eugenics and whatever weird stuff right-wing Nazi types of folks are into, right? And so, and it is really, it's frightening how much it's seeping into our world, right? Like it is frightening how much I don't know what you want to call it, like right-wing backlash we get to like any ounce of progress we have made as a society gets like a big backlash of like people wanting to take us backwards. So I don't know. It's hard to like reckon with, because like, not to say that like people who are involved in spiritual publishing are all like super right wing or anything, but I think it's like they might not be, but if you're engaging in spiritual bypassing, you're probably enabling the more scary right wing ideas without you knowing it, or like whether you know it or not, you're probably enabling it. And so yeah, I don't know, it's like a big systemic issue thing, and I find it like a little bit disheartening, but then also just like knowing that like, oh, that's a reality in like so many other industries and fields, that like I know that people will find the right solutions and whatnot to it, like how Rebecca Baruchi of Row House Publishing is like someone who is doing something to show that there's a different way than just your typical publishing industry spiritual bypassing place. And you know, I know there's going to be other people in time who will be doing that work, so maybe that's what it's about, is to find the people who are like us, who are doing the things to show that there's a way of doing things differently, and just supporting them and following them. And so yeah, that's some of my reflection on that. But Zahra, feel free to like share more, whatever you felt like you had a lot to say, because I always want to hear.
Yeah, one I want to add to what you're saying is yes, very much. It's finding the people who are doing the things differently and putting your time and attention and energy into those, because like when we look at the big system, it's so fucking overwhelming when you're like, cool, white supremacy has invaded spiritual publishing, the police department, federal government, many other systems I don't feel like getting into because I'm not trying to cry this early in the morning. You know what I mean? It's like hard, but there are so many people who are doing it. And I also love that you also looked up Rebecca Baruchi's last name in between. Because I looked it up this morning, like, I have to remember to say that properly this time. Because we're recording this at a different time than when we recorded our interview, which is okay, everyone. We're doing it fine. We're doing it different. But yeah, I even though we talk about this more on our Substack episode, our bonus episodes, you guys will want to check that out. I am publicly like kind of promoting it again, but it's because I want to take a second to talk about Marianne Williamson, where a lot of non-intending to be like people who think they're liberal or left-leaning, who are like, yeah, that are like spiritual and spiritually bypassing. I saw a clip on TikTok where someone was talking about it. I saw someone responding to the way someone was talking about it, but she was like, oh, she's saying all the right things, but you just don't get a good vibe from her. That's why you don't want to vote for her. And it's like, yeah, that's your intuition saying something's wrong here, and I don't know what it is. So you like listen to that. And the vibe you're all getting is that she heavily promotes eugenics and ableism through A Course in Miracles and a lot of the other Christian-based work she does. And when we have people like the representative in North Carolina who ran as a Democrat, got voted in as a Democrat, and then said, surprise, I'm going to switch my party affiliation once in office, you know, like we can't have people like Marianne Williamson, who honestly just seems like she wants an important position of power. And then she can say, see, look what manifestation can do for you. I manifested myself to be the president. Join A Course in Miracles or whatever bullshit thing I'm selling now. You know, like if she really wanted to be why is she not trying to hold public office? Sorry, I know this is now just like a Marianne Williamson rant, but I do feel like people need to talk about it, because too many people on the left are like, yeah, but she's got some good ideas. And it's like, yeah, because she stole them from actual public officials who are like working public servants and people with good ideas, and Black and brown folks, which is unsurprising. Sorry. I'm like now on a high horse about Marianne Williamson and I can't stop myself. So, Ken, do you have anything to say about Marianne Williamson?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, first of all, I'm not too worried about her in terms of like the things that you are saying that are true, that's like worth, talking about. I'm not too worried because I really don't think she's going to go that far in her, political aspirations. And so like there's like that one sort of maybe good / hopeful part of it is I really don't think she'll go that far. But I guess the other thing is like it is really difficult to, I guess where my mind's at with this is that it's hard to have like, I feel like, I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's hard to have like a good spiritual, maybe not a good spiritual leader, but like a trustworthy spiritual leader around. Because I mean, that is what Marianne sells herself as, right? Is the thing about her that's so different than everyone else who has political aspirations right now is like, she's quote spiritual, and spiritual in like not just Christian, but in the more new agey woo-woo way, which can really appeal to a lot of people and can feel interesting or healing or whatever. But then it is like you said, like, but also she's very problematic. And I have thought about it. I have thought about like, why is she running for president and not for like, I don't know, her little local office, like where she can really, impact. Like if she supposedly has good ideas and is doing it for the people, right? Like if her supposed motivation is for the people and like helping them with whatever on a spiritual level as well as not, then why is she not doing it on a smaller scale first, just to get that experience and see if she can do it? Like she goes for the highest office, and like she wouldn't say it's because of this, but I definitely know it's because of her ego. Like this is the funny thing about these so-called spiritual leaders, right? It's like no matter what they preach and what they say, when you look at their actions, I do think she has ego stuff. I don't even know if she knows, but that doesn't matter. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, you have ego stuff. And like the more I think about it, it makes me sad, because like I am one of the people who on the left feels like, well, she does have some good ideas and she is saying stuff that a lot of us would agree with or would want, is I just don't think she's doing it for the right reasons. And I honestly feel she is a grifter, and it makes me sad because like I would prefer that she wasn't, like I would prefer that she wasn't super problematic and that she would want to learn about how the things she said in the past is harmful. But I've never really heard her like go back and say like, yeah, I once said this and I don't agree with it anymore. I really feel this way instead. Like there's no like reconciliation of anything. It's just like good vibes only, moving forward. And I mean, of course, right? So yeah, I guess that's how I feel. It's like I do wish we had good, trustworthy spiritual leaders just in anywhere. Like not saying it has to be in spiritual publishing, but just anywhere. And Tia does have more to say about her in the bonus episode. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Zahra, what's your take on that? Just in terms of thinking about so-called spiritual leaders in general.
I'm actually glad you asked that, because you made an important point that I think feeds into what we're talking about, where you were like, she is spiritual and not in the Christian sense and in the woo-woo sense, which a lot of people in this country will like. And it's like, of course, a lot of people in this country will like it. We're a country that, one, is bearing very close, we're running very close to being a Christo-fascist nation. And two, we're a country that has depended on Christian supremacy and what, you know what I mean? And people have not deconstructed their relationship to the faith. A lot of people, like, I noticed this with a lot of like atheists who are like, really hardcore, like almost like cruel and not pedantic, like condescending about their atheism. And it's like, yeah, it's just the same values as your Christianity. You've just repurposed them to say God is not real. So that's where I think someone like Marianne Williamson could be dangerous, because just like we said, oh, Donald Trump isn't going to get very far. He's an idiot. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, she's preying on what this country is lacking, which is a spiritual and moral and value-centered approach to life. And she is a grifter who is trying to sell people like, yeah, let's just like get things back. Let's move things forward. And like, yeah, but what has she proven that she can do that in? You know what I mean? She has no experience or understanding of the job. And she has a history of not addressing her issues. She just goes back and says, oh, I said a thing about Black and brown people just like wanting that experience, and that's why they've chosen to come into this hard life. You know, actually, no, reparations, you know? And it's like, I mean, yes, reparations, but also you haven't addressed the internalized, what is a relatable white supremacy value of like, you know, you have to believe you're in the right place, in the better place, and that's it. And if you have a bad experience, it's your fault. Like, that's dangerous to tell people, particularly in a system and a structure that is actively designed to harm some people and actively designed to help others. So I don't know. I have a lot of fears and worries about Marianne Williamson. I don't know that she'd make it to the primary because our good old buddy Joe Biden's running again, because sorry, I just got a long, sad stare off distance look thinking about that reality. And I don't know what I want to say about it, but Hien, do you have anything to say about what I said or Joe Biden?
No, I don't, because I feel like I don't have a lot to say about it, because I feel like it's gonna play out how it's gonna play out. And do I feel good about any of it? No, but like it is gonna play out how it's gonna play out. And I really don't think Marianne's gonna really go very far. And if she does, I mean, like, I don't like saying this as like a positive thing to say, because it's not, but it's like, I kind of do feel like so many of us lived through the Trump presidency once already. And I wish we didn't have to, but we did. And so if we were to, for whatever reason, get a Marianne presidency, which I find very unlikely, we'll do what we have to do. Like, I guess I sound really naive, but I'm just putting my trust in like one day at a time. It is what it is. The people I know will rally and do what we got to do. That's kind of where my mind is at. Like, I know it's probably really unexpected to hear from a 4, but early this morning, that's where my mind is at. Is like, it is what it is. And I really believe and trust in the people who are on the right side of history. I really do trust that we will do what we have to do to survive. Like, maybe not win in all the ways we want to win, but to survive. I do believe in that.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment. Yeah, let's all survive.
Yeah. So I guess we leave you with that message, to survive. But then, you know, also going back to Tia's interview, you know, I hope you have a serendipitous week, serendipitous life. You know, I hope you are able to do the things that might seem scary to you, whether that's like traveling to Greece. That's what it was for her. Or just something else, something new. And I hope you find where you're meant to be and where find what you're meant to find out there. That's gonna be what I'm gonna say to wrap this episode up. Anything else, Zahra?
I think that's a great message to leave it on all. We wish you a serendipitous life.
Thank you for listening to the Thoughtful Wellness Revolution podcast. For bonus content, you can go to thoughtfulwellnessrevolution.substack.com and subscribe for $5 a month. You can also follow us on Instagram at Thoughtful Wellness Revolution to share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you're listening.